Celluloid Dreams is a brand new boutique Blu-ray label that has just launched with their first title, The Case of the Bloody Iris. On Blu-ray and 4K, this is a giallo film. It is the work of essentially two people, Guido Henkel and his son Lucas Henkel. Now, Guido is a name you might already know, especially if you're a video game fan, because he is, if you're familiar with the game Planescape Torment, it was a huge cult classic, that's him. He also founded DVDreview.com. So he's been both an artist, a creator, and a journalist and a reviewer of both video games and of the home media scene. So it's really interesting to me that in 2024 he's launching Celluloid Dreams, which is, again, it's the brainchild of essentially two people. They're doing all the work. Guido and Lucas are doing the curation of the films. They're doing the restoration work on the films. They're doing the color correction. They're commissioning the special features. It is an astounding amount of work on the backs of two people. And so what I got from this interview, and what I hope that you come in with an open mind as well, is that at a time when the boutique Blu-ray scene is so crowded, there's never been more competition for our dollars. Here's someone who says, we're going to take our time, we're going to do it right, we're not going to put out a release every single month, we'll do the best we can, we'll see how many we can get out in a year, but we're going to do it right. That is remarkable. And I'm going to tell you, it's uncommon as well, because a lot of people get into this for the business reason, simply like, well, it's a way to make money off the backs of collectors. I've talked to these people. We've had a lot of conversations here with labels and with people behind the labels here. It is a business. But when you can talk to somebody and connect with them who just loves the arts and does this because of a love and a passion for film, that's exciting. So I hope that you come away with that, with this as well. There's going to be links in the description for this episode for everything that you need. Here's my conversation with Guido Henkel about Celluloid Dreams. I hope you enjoy it. You've climbed several mountains in your time, right? So you've got the whole video game, like, I mean, I don't want to overstate it, but you're a really big, you've got a lot of accomplishments in the video game field. I mean, if we can talk about just Planescape Torment,
Yeah,
right off I mean, that alone is a
yeah,
huge deal. Then you start the DVD review site,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
What so you're like, now's the time to start a label. Like, just talk to me a little bit about your creative thought process, and like, why with everything you've accomplished, I'm curious, like, why now for a label?
The reason is essentially my son, Lucas. Um, so because we've been running DVD review for over 20 years and all that, he was constantly exposed to movies as he was growing up. I mean, we have a huge movie collection here at home and all, and whatever movie he wanted to watch, he had access to immediately, essentially. So he grew up in this whole culture, and also because I was so involved with Hollywood on that end, he sort of felt connected to the whole movie industry early on at an early age. Um, so he went to UCI and got a degree in software engineering, but his heart was really in movies. So when he was finished, he tried to get a job as a colorist in some of the studios and all that. But it was really hard to get a foot in the door because most of these smaller independent labels say, you know, we have our guys, we don't need new guys right now. So sorry, you know, you're really good, but we're really sorry. So eventually, because I always taught him, when it comes to opportunities, don't wait for opportunities, create your own opportunities and go from there. And that's basically been the philosophy of everything I've done in my life. And that's why, as you mentioned, you know, I've had these different stepping stones in my career. And he took that to heart and he came to me and was like, you know, do you think it would actually be realistic and feasible to start a boutique home video label, license movies, restore them, bring them to market and all? And I told him, I have no idea off the top of my head. I mean, obviously companies like Synapse and Blue Underground make it work. So there has to be some kind of feasibility there. But I told him the best way to find out is let's run the numbers. So we sat down, we reached out to, or no, we sat down and we said, okay, what kind of movies would we be doing or would you be doing? And his interest has always been in Gialli. So that was his instinct, his first go-to. And we looked through lists of movies as, okay, what would be a potential candidate for that? So we made a short list of about 10 movies where we said, this would be cool, you know, if we could grab something like that and put it out. So from there, we started tracking down the rights holders so that we could inquire about the licenses. We approached them, which is hard enough, you know, just figuring out who owns what and then finding contact information for the respective people and all. So we reached out and we got the first feedback, you know, we got the first information back, lists of movies from different companies that say, okay, we have these movies available, this is the status, these are taken, these are available for licensing right now, and these are our terms. So we looked at that, says, okay, it's a lot of money, but let's see. Then we went through the whole production and manufacturing side of things and got price quotes from all over the world to see how much would it cost to manufacture discs, packaging, bonus, you know, extras like our beautiful lobby cards and all that.
Mhm.
Put all the numbers in, and we were like, okay, now we need bonus features. How do you even acquire bonus features? We don't have the wherewithal to create them ourselves, so we would have to rely on other people. And in that case, Freakorama immediately jumped to mind, you know, because they created some of the greatest features on, especially in that niche, in that category of movies.
Mhm.
So I reached out to Freakorama, got information, and we talked about pricing and all that. And so we put all these numbers together in a spreadsheet, ran it. Oh yeah, and then we looked at it. Okay, how many copies can we sell? But we had no idea, you know, it's like, because that is typically not public information. So again, I reached out to distribution companies here in the US and said, okay, what can I expect from a title like this? And they gave me rough ballpark numbers. Again, went back to the spreadsheet, put it all in, made a whole business plan essentially. And in the end, sat down, looked at it and said, yeah, this could work. You know, it's not unfeasible. It's not like you're gonna get rich overnight in something like that, but it can be profitable and it can carry itself. I said, okay, let's do it.
Did did you face any resistance for you talked about reaching out to companies to see if you could license the movies. Did you face any resistance because people were maybe someone said, I don't know, you have no company, like you have no established track
Yeah,
record with
yeah.
distributing films.
Yeah, the way we've been treated varied widely. You know, there were some companies who immediately jumped on it and said, "Hey, it's great to have another label. We would love to work with you. Here's our list and all." Then there are certain labels or certain companies who say, "Yeah, not in this lifetime. You know, it's not going to happen."
Wow.
And then there were some companies that are a little more reluctant and go like, "Yeah, well, these are our terms." And then when we started following up and sort of pushed a little more because we wanted certain specs, certain features and all that, then slowly you could see the gate come down and it's like, nah, 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 nah. You know, you're
Yeah.
asking for too much. You're not important enough. And then in one case, you know, we really had the case where it was like, yeah, we have this movie, but we would never license it to you. You know, we have other clients that we have a long-standing relationship with who want that title as well. They would get first pick.
So you've mentioned something that I've encountered in my own travels because I've started doing commentaries myself, and I've noticed because because of what I do, I've developed a lot of relationships with people at distributors and even at some of the studios. And you notice that there's sort of like a club almost of the people that are already doing it. Listen, there's people that are doing like just from the special features aspect of things, there are people that are contributing 4, 5, 6 commentaries every single month.
Yeah.
Now, one, I don't. You've done there's a commentary for on the case of the Bloody Iris from you, so you know, you don't just crank out a commentary overnight. It takes a lot of research and a lot of work. Um,
Took me
I
by
have been
surprise.
really struck by how much of a club there seems to be. And
Yeah.
when you're not in it and you're trying to get into it,
Yeah.
not even trying to be part of the club, but when you have work that you want to do, there's resistance there.
Sometimes, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting also that I noticed because I've been reaching out to some of those folks, you know, the big names you keep seeing pop up and all, and they wouldn't even respond to me. It's like, okay, you know, fine.
Wow.
I mean, I don't know. The weird thing for me is some of these folks offer services, but
Mhm.
they do not, how should I say, they hide behind the anonymity of the internet, meaning I couldn't even find contact information for some of these people, you know. They have a blog, they have a website, they have all these social media, but no real go-to contact address. So it was even when I tried, it was impossible for me to find them and locate them and get in touch with them. So that's, I don't know. I think I don't have enough experience yet at this
Mhm.
point to really say how this is all working out
Yeah.
and how other companies really work their things. I've been on the periphery for a long time because I used to be very close to Anchor Bay at the time when they created, you know, all these Jolly output and all that on DVD back in the day because of my work at DVD Review. So I knew the technical process about what it takes to put a DVD together and all. Um, and I know many of the folks from other labels, you know, like Mondo Macabro, Blue Underground, Synapse, and all that. I know the guys and all that, but it's always very different if I talk to them back as a writer, as a journalist for DVD Review, as opposed to now as kind of a competitor. And my experience has been so far that it's very, very friendly. Yeah,
That's
so
good.
I have to admit, you know, some of the folks when I was kind of stuck and said, how do I go about this? Where do I get this information from? I would reach out to some of them, and all of them have been super helpful and said, yeah, you know, we get our stuff from here, we get our stuff from there. Just talk to these people and all. So that was really cool. So even if there is a club, you know, it's kind of welcoming because we know we're all working in the same field, and even
Mhm.
though there is some sense of competition, you know, we're all swimming in the same pool. If one day it's this company that needs something, the other day it's somebody else. And
Yeah.
I think that's my sense how this feels.
Well, let me say this before we go any further. So this release, The Case of the Bloody Iris, I'm holding it up. You've got both both titles here. This feels as if you've been around for 10 years. I mean, it's like you just sprang forth fully formed. The quality of the restoration, the quality of the supplemental features, even the 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 celluloid dreams logo, the title logo, like I love it. It feels as if it's always been you guys. I'm talking to the audience now. The FBI warning on this thing looks like it's being projected at like a drive-in or something. I mean, there's such attention to detail. So I wanted to congratulate you. This is your first release, but it feels like it's maybe your 50th or something.
Yeah. Thank you. I mean, that was the intention. I mean, again, it's a lot of the experience that I bring from my background. I've been producing games, you know,
Mhm.
physical games and all that packaging. I've been producing books. So I'm pretty familiar with how you put things out in the public as a product, the level of polish you need to really compete in the marketplace, um, certain don't do's and all that. That was really important to me because I've seen in my lifetime, I've seen thousands and thousands of DVD and Blu-ray and 4K releases. And every once in a while you see one and you go like, I don't know what you guys were thinking, you know, this doesn't feel organic, this doesn't feel good, and it just doesn't look good either, you know. So sometimes you get the sense that the people making some releases are not in it for the movie or anything without any passion. They're really just doing it as a day job, 9 to 5. It's like, I need to crank this title out and be done with it,
It
that
was
sort of thing.
Tuesday,
Yeah.
right? It was just
When we
Tuesday.
came into it, for us, it was a work of passion. You know, it was like, we want to do this. This would be so cool to have your own home video label, pick these movies and sort of inject yourself into the lifeline or into the life cycle of a particular movie, which is a really incredible feeling once you start doing that, because suddenly it doesn't just become a movie that's somewhere on a screen. Suddenly you're really becoming part of the legacy of that film, and that is very special.
Yeah.
And that's why when we got into it, we said we either do it right or we don't even try, you know. So that's why the pricing, the costing upfront was so important to us that we say, let's see if we do this really the way we want to do it, can we make a living of that? You know, is it really sustainable? And yeah, a lot of it is the experience, you know, in the home video market. Um, having seen so many releases, having seen what other studios do, having seen where some of them fall short, and the opposite, where some of them really excel, where you go like, oh, this is cool. I love that. Let's do something like that. Let's make sure we look like that. And that was just the driving force behind it all.
This is only so it's a 4K Blu-ray combo pack. That's the only version of this you've put out, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a calculated choice right there. We're only going to do a 4K and a Blu-ray. You don't
yeah,
choose one or the other.
yeah.
Does
Yeah,
that
but
just come
again,
from?
that was the philosophy, because many times if you put out a Blu-ray disc separately from a 4K disc, many times to me it feels like studio or people are trying to double dip. It's like, okay, I'm going to sell you the Blu-ray disc today, but I know down the line you may upgrade and then you have to buy it again. Sure, I mean from a monetary standpoint, that's probably a sensible choice, but from a consumer standpoint, it sucks. I mean, I keep hearing people complain all the time that they have to purchase and repurchase and repurchase and repurchase their favorite movies. And I see it in my library as well. I mean, how many copies of, I don't know, The Lord of the Rings do I have? It's like unfathomable almost. And we said, we want to produce this with the consumer in mind. Really, it's like, what would I want if I were to buy this disc? And well, I would like a Blu-ray disc and a 4K disc because I have both in the house. And in one room I play the 4K, in the other room I may play the Blu-ray. Depending on my needs, I pick the respective disc. And it just felt fair. And that is really the philosophy that we have. We try to be fair to the customer because these discs are not cheap. I mean, you're paying $40 for this, or where are we? $45 for this. That's a lot of money. It's not nothing to sneeze at. And I think we have a responsibility as a label to give it our best.
One of the things I'd love to get your take on as someone who's been reviewing movies on disc for so long. You've seen these people who say 4K is a gimmick. It doesn't look any better. It's just the cell TVs. I would love your take on that. Also, because on your commentary here, you do a really great breakdown about the whole scope process where you talk about how these restorations are achieved. You talk about how it looks better on 4K than it looked in theaters. And I would like you to elaborate a little bit, just maybe addressing some of the criticisms that people have, maybe the more, I mean, I want to call them the casual audience, the people who have not yet adopted 4K.
I mean, I think it's easy to be jaded that way. I agree. Because once we hit Blu-ray, and I'm speaking from my own experience, when I saw Blu-ray for the first time, I was like, this is it. That's all we need. It doesn't need to get any better than that. But the same thing happened again to me when I saw 4K, especially with HDR. All of a sudden you see details in the picture that you didn't even know were there. But I think the bias also comes from the fact how the transfers look, because there's a 4K Ultra HD and there's a 4K Ultra HD. If the picture is completely blown out and the HDR is not set up correctly, you're not gaining anything. That's why it's really, really important to be really very careful when you handle your transfer to make sure all the information is retained, and you're not scrubbing stuff in the restoration phase. You're not lowering your black levels too far so that you're hiding stuff in the shadows and all that. So it's a very delicate process. So I think it goes hand in hand with the quality of the releases to convince people that 4K is actually worthwhile. And unfortunately, I think there have been a number of releases out there that didn't fulfill that promise. You put the 4K in and you look at it, it's like, yeah, that's not really a big improvement to the Blu-ray. Yet on the other hand, there are releases and you put them in and you just go like, holy cow, what just happened? It's like somebody reinvented television or, home video. So there is a huge range in between. And if people would see the right titles, they would probably see, yes, 4K is worth the upgrade, or they would say, yeah, 4K is definitely an improvement. But for many casual viewers, they never really get that experience potentially. So
Yeah.
that's the problem. And my hope is that almost like Blu-ray, when Blu-ray came out, everybody was like, yeah, Blu-ray is not going anywhere. My take was always, well, the technology will become so cheap that a Blu-ray player is as expensive or as cheap, as affordable as a DVD player. So it will be an automatic upgrade. Once they replace their player, they will automatically get a Blu-ray player, which plays both Blu-ray and DVD. And my hope is still that the same will happen with 4K, that eventually, as people buy new players, they're not grabbing the latest Blu-ray player, they're instead grabbing a 4K player and then gradually ease into that new 4K experience.
Yeah, because the 4K player plays Blu-ray. Like you said, the Blu-ray
Yeah,
player also plays DVD, but the 4K player plays Blu-ray and DVD and the
yeah,
4K disc.
yeah.
When people, I say to people, well, when your television dies, and it's going to, your next TV is probably going to be a 4K television.
Exactly.
So
That's the thing.
that's how it works, is like
Yeah.
things just sort of
And
phase out. And
and
you,
that's also the reason, like you asked earlier, why we have both the Blu-ray and the 4K disc in the same package, because we hope that people will upgrade, that people who buy it now because they want the Blu-ray, not the 4K, in 2 years' time or so will actually may have that migration and then have access to the highest quality of the movie still without having to repurchase the product.
yeah. You referenced Blue Underground a few times. You know, I talked to Bill Lustig. I interviewed Bill Lustig about because he's taken like everything he's got in his catalog, he's putting out on 4K. And I said, you know, you make movies, you've made all these movies. How do you want your movie to look? Do you want it like how do you feel about 4K as a filmmaker? And he was like, oh, this is it. He's like, when the movie was brand new, this is how I wanted it to look. This is my dream for how these things should look. So I know people say, well, I don't want it to look too clean. These movies are supposed to look scungy, but the filmmakers often want them to look as good as they
Yeah,
can.
yeah,
And I think we owe it to the filmmakers
yeah,
and to the movies themselves to present
yeah.
them as best as we can.
I mean, that was part of our mission as well. When we approached the case of the Bloody Iris, one of the first questions we had to ask ourselves was, how clean do we want it to look? I mean, of course, you want to remove all the defects, but many movies these days are digitally scrubbed. They remove grain, they remove noise, and all of a sudden you have a picture that looks like, yes, it looks gorgeous, but is this really the movie? Is that what it used to be? And the answer is no, definitely not. The movie used to be a little grainy, and many filmmakers use grain to build atmosphere as a stylistic choice. It's not because it was inherent in the medium only, but really some of them used it very deliberately to create a certain look, feel, and to express their intent. And it would be wrong for us to interfere with that, to suddenly go in and say, okay, we're cleaning all that up, and make this a pristine copy of the movie. So our plan was always, we will not really touch the grain. With the equipment that you have these days, when you make a transfer from a film, the grain you're getting is really the grain and not the scanner noise. Because in previous generation, oftentimes the problem was when you scan it, you have a lot of digital noise in there from the sensor that is introduced and not really part of the original film. These days, the technology and the machinery has evolved to the point that you can say noise is no longer an issue. So when you scan something, you get really a simulacrum of the film. So having to remove grain is not or noise is not necessary, really. So as soon as you apply DNR or something like that, you are really affecting the film itself. And we did not want that.
Yeah.
So we kept DNR to an absolute minimum. We throughout the film, we didn't apply it at all. There was just a few shots in the film where the film had deteriorated so bad that it really started to flicker because of the noise patterns and all that. And we said, okay, we need to really get in there very gently to stabilize that, but without removing the grain. And that's what we did.
It's interesting to get your take on grain too, because with your video game background, there's a lot of people who have grown up with PlayStation 5 or 60 frames per second, and they don't know what like a pixel Like they, they
Yeah.
they are used to everything being so crystal clear. And so I'm even your son having grown up in the house he's grown up in with all the video game access and everything. It's interesting that you guys would say, no, the grain is supposed to be there. It's part of the film.
Yeah.
We're not going to let it overtake it, but we also it needs to be there. That's interesting to me. I like that.
It's it Part of it is probably because every time I look at video games, I ask myself, what went wrong here visually? Because they're gorgeous these days. But for some reason, if you look at a screen from a video play, you immediately know it's a video game. And I oftentimes ask myself, why is that? The technology is there to make this look hyper realistic. We see it in movies all the time. When they do CGI special effects and all that, they make it look like it's part of the movie. It doesn't look like a video game unless it's done poorly. So why do video games always look like video games? And the answer for me has always been they're too detailed, they're too sharp-edged, so that outlines are always razor sharp and all that. They usually have too little atmospheric, I don't know what the word is, deterioration,
Yeah.
maybe, whether it's just volumetric fog or something, that suggests depth or just an atmosphere around the scene as a whole, but there was always something missing. So the uncanny valley in effect, essentially. And I think that is what made me appreciate film so much more. That I said, okay, this looks like a film. And I love the look of film. And Lucas is even more extreme in that. He loves the look of film, projected film. If he has the chance to see a projected 35 millimeter print of something in a theater, he will run, he will not just walk, he will run there to see that. So to him, it was incredibly important to represent a film look as opposed to a digital media look.
Yeah. I love that. Are you if if I may ask, are you financing some of these restorations yourself, or are you picking up things that have already been
Everything.
restored? Everything?
We're financing everything ourselves.
Is it as I don't need numbers, but is it as expensive as people say it is?
It's pretty expensive, yeah.
Yeah. That's
It
because
is.
everybody, that's the thing that people come you again because you've been reviewing these, you see the complaints. People go, they don't have to charge that much for it. It's a tax to it's a luxury tax. I'm like, no, it costs a lot of money to do a
It
restoration in
does cost a
4K.
lot of money because, I mean, if you take production costs, manufacturing costs and all that, that's actually the smaller part of it almost. But if you take a look at the restoration, like the Bloody Iris, for example, I did the entire restoration myself for the entire movie. That's 135,000 frames. That takes time. I've been working on this movie for 6 months just for the restoration. So 6 months is money. If you're a company and you have to pay salaries, that adds up to really, really big numbers very quickly. And the same is true for coloration, for the color grading. Lucas did all the color grading on the film, and he took almost as long because we wanted to get it right. It's a little different, if you're working in a pipeline in some big studio where they really churn these things out and where they may even have pristine elements. But if you're committing to a movie from the 70s that is over 50 years old and has been sitting in a vault in Rome somewhere, you're not getting pristine elements. So there's a lot of work necessary for these. And that takes time. The software alone costs a fortune, to do these things. The hardware you need to wrangle these data is super expensive because we're talking about 4K resolution, which means we're talking about a transfer that is 4, 5, 6 terabytes in size. And that's just the transfer itself. Now you start working on it, you have work files, you have cache files and all that. It boggles the mind how much storage you need for that and how slow computers are in pushing that amount of data through the pipeline. So if you want to make a copy of a hard drive and all that, you plug it in and you start the copy process, and then you can walk away for a day or so. So,
That's incredible.
so all these things, it's like, and a lot of it was surprising to me as well because I didn't know. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, you can do the math and all, and it's all academic, but once you really have a hard drive, or let me say how it went for us. We contacted the lab and we said, hey, we need the transfer for this film. And they'll say, okay, it's going to take this long. Send us a hard drive so we can copy it on. I'm like, okay, how large a hard drive do you need? Well, make it 18 terabytes. I was like, huh? Yeah. So, okay, you send them an 18 terabyte hard drive and it comes back with the transfer and the trailers and the overlays for the title screens and so forth, everything they had in their archive. And yeah,
The more I hear about this stuff, the more I realize what I don't know. Like everybody thinks they're an expert or they want to be an expert. The more I hear about it, the more I learn. I'm like, I don't know anything.
yeah.
Um, Hearing the size of these files, and then somebody was explaining to me how he's like, well, we can take the grain out completely, and then we can put it back in later. I was like, what? Now I don't even know what to believe. So, are you going to take? Will every release that comes out from you guys take 6 months, or how will that work for you guys?
It's it's a little hard to tell at this point.
It's early days. It's so
Hoping
early. You've done one,
no,
right?
here's the thing. We're hoping to be able to do it faster. Right now, I don't see exactly how we can do it.
Hmm.
Um, but we're trying, let's put it that way. I would
Yeah.
like to have more releases. Um, we just need to figure out the processes for it. How now that we've been through the first one, it was a huge learning curve for us. Like I said, I mean,
Hmm.
we didn't know what to expect in many instances. Now we have the workflows, the tool chains in place. We know how we go about authoring the discs and all that. What do we need? What kind of assets do we need? How long does it take? How do we do quality control? These kinds of things, all of it takes time. And but now that we have the processes in place, we can say, okay, where can we rearrange our schedules to accommodate these things a little better so that we work on this while somebody else is working on that. So while, for example, the authoring for one movie is being worked on, we can already work on the restoration of the next one. And that helps a lot. But
Hmm.
still, the schedule for us will probably never be 1 or 2 titles a month. I don't think we can do that.
Yeah.
And it's not really the plan either. Celluloid Dreams, as it is, has no ambition to grow much. We don't want to hire 5 or 10 people or whatever just so that we can accommodate a faster schedule. To us, it's much more like Criterion used to be back in the day, where it was like, it'll take as long as it takes, but when it comes, you will know it and you will hopefully like it. That's the idea.
Well, let's show people a little bit this first release. I've held it up a few times. There will have been an introduction before our conversation began, so people will have seen it. But you've got a lot of really nice, tangible goodies here. There's this mouse pad. These lobby cards are huge. I think these are the biggest lobby cards that I've seen in the physical media, the
Yeah.
boutique scene. And yeah, that's the backboard. But what was the decision behind like let's make them bigger than what comes? They don't fit in the case, these are much bigger.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, to be perfectly honest, every time I see the small lobby cards that fit into the case, I'm asking myself, what's the point? You can't even see anything. There are these beautiful pieces of art sometimes, cover
Hmm.
art, poster art, and all that, and suddenly they appear on this tiny little 5x7 lobby card, and I'm like, I don't know, what is the appeal? What is even the purpose for this? I never got that. To me, it never added value, really. That was my sense. So I was
Hmm.
like, okay, what can we do to really add value so that people have a tangible sense of, hey, this is cool, this is different, this is really worth looking at. So the first step was, let's make the lobby cards bigger, the size, how they really were. But, this was kind of funny. So we bought real photobuste from Italy, And when they arrived, I was like, holy cow, I had no idea. They're even bigger. They
Yeah.
are twice the size of these lobby cards that we printed. They're mini posters, essentially. And I did not
Hmm.
know that either. I was like, okay, good choice that we decided to make large lobby cards, because if you would bring these down to a tiny little 5x7 or so, it's like there wouldn't be anything left. You could hardly read the text and all that. It's like, no, that shouldn't be. It feels wrong. So let's
Yeah.
say, let's make the big ones and give people really something to hold on to. They can put it on the wall if they want to. You can frame it, you know. You can get them signed maybe at a convention or who knows what, you know.
Mhm.
Opportunities are endless and they just look nice. They look
Yeah.
gorgeous. So when we got them back from the printer and we opened the first ones, even I was taken aback because that glossy finish and all, it's like,
Beautiful.
oh, this is so much nicer than I had hoped it would be.
Hmm. Yeah. Will you be focusing primarily on Italian films, or do you want to do other kinds of films as well?
We will be doing other films as well.
Okay.
Our The films that we licensed currently are all Italian, but
Hmm.
we are actively looking outside Italy as well and outside the genre. So it won't all be gialli and thrillers down the line. But for now, yes, that's our
Okay.
playground.
Uh, you've the second title is public, right? You've
Yeah,
announced the second. Let's talk a little bit about the second title.
yeah, it's the black belly of the tarantula. Um, One of the landmarks in the giallo genre, obviously, because it came right after Argento's Bird with the Crystal Plumage. So it was really kind of a trendsetter in the genre in that it created a giallo, but did it in a very, very different way that Argento did. And by doing that, inadvertently sort of created a playing field, opened up a playing field by telling other directors, you don't have to copy what Argento does. You can go in a completely different direction and still have a very powerful giallo that remains a giallo. So I think it's a very influential film in that respect, that it really gave permission to other filmmakers to experiment, to try other things and not follow, strictly follow a certain template.
Hmm.
So it's a beautiful film. And again, we have a 4K transfer. Uh, we're doing the restoration and all that. We have some surprises in uh, lined up for that particular title. So yeah, we're just not ready to announce the details yet because still things are still in flux there. We're trying to do something really, really interesting and really exciting, but we're not entirely sure at this point if we can get all the assets we need to do it.
Where do you want people to buy these releases?
Wherever they can find them.
Okay.
It doesn't really matter. I mean, ideally, yes, we want them to buy it on our website because our profit margin is the largest there. So, yes, it helps us to sell through our website. But, if people are more comfortable buying it on Amazon or, through Diabolic DVD or some other store, hey, by all means, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
But every sale counts.
Well, and I'll have put social media links in the description of this episode, but also, where do you want them? Is there any particular place you referenced the website? So we want them to hit the website. Where do you want people to keep in touch with you so that they can find out exactly when this stuff is going to come out?
I mean, we're covering it in all our social media.
Mhm.
Whenever I post something on Twitter, it also goes on Blue Sky and Facebook and Instagram. So it doesn't really matter which one they follow. The information is out on all the social media for us.
Is there anything that before I let you go, is there anything that you want to cover that I maybe didn't bring up?
I mean, you mentioned earlier the amount of work necessary for the commentary. It's like, yeah,
You did a good job, by the way.
it hit
You did
me
a good
over the
job.
head, to be
Yeah.
honest, because the initial instinct was when we planned the bonus feature was like, yeah, we'll just have a sit down, talk about the movie while we watch it and record it and be done with it. Yeah, it's nothing like that. I
Mm-mm.
tried that, and there were so many ums and us and in there, where you're
Yep.
not in the flow and all. It's like, no, this is not going to work. So, and then just the amount of research that needs to go into this. But I'm glad I did it. It's like because I learned so much about the movie.
Hmm.
I learned so much about the process of making this movie, this particular movie. I learned so much about the people, and it gave me an appreciation for the movie that I honestly did not have before. It's it's incredible. I mean, the achievement is incredible, even though it's not an A-tier giallo. Just the amount of work, the amount of creativity, the amount of vision and labor that went into this is sometimes mind-boggling to
You
me.
realize that every movie is a miracle. It's a
Yeah,
miracle that it
exactly.
exists.
Exactly. It's you really do realize it's like, yeah, it's not like this was just, you know, uh, a factory job or whatever. It's like that there were so many decisions to be made and so many instances of where things probably didn't work out the way they were supposed to. So many constellations of the stars that have to align, you know, to make this
Mhm.
happen at the right time, with the right weather, with the right lighting, with the right people. And it's fascinating. It really is fascinating.
Was that your first commentary?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, congratulations, because
Thanks.
again, it doesn't
Thanks. And
feel you just sprang forth fully formed with this commentary. I mean, you got
that,
all the bases covered. You know, I've done 12 of them now, and they don't get easier. Other they do
yeah,
not get any easier. And you realize, like, I think like halfway through, you're like, I think I've said a lot of what I wanted to say about this movie, but you still have all this time to kill.
yeah,
Not kill. You have this time to fill. And so you find yourself like, okay, my last one, I think I had 45 pages of notes.
yeah,
You really become like an archivist of this thing. You're
yeah,
tracking down as much information as you can find. And I know some people don't even listen to them. It's just that, oh, it's on. I'll buy it if it has a commentary. Then they don't even listen to it. But
yeah.
so much work goes into these things, and I wanted to tip my hat to you. You have the cool hat, but I'll tip my imaginary hat to you.
The funny thing is also some of the things I talked about in the commentary came up because I was doing the restoration. So I'm going through it frame by frame, and all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? When we watched it last time or the times before, I never noticed that everybody is staring at the camera. But you know, when you go through it frame by frame, it's like,
Yeah.
there it is. Here's somebody on the side of the street and staring straight into the camera. Here's somebody lurking around the corner straight into the camera. Oh, here's the lady who covers her face because she doesn't want to be in a movie. These
Hmm.
sorts of things all the time. And yeah, it helps. And then when I was researching the locations, for example, that, yeah, you bring up Google Maps and suddenly you realize, hey, these are just two different sides of the same street. So they literally just turned around the camera, shoot one side and then shoot the other, and you think you're in two totally separate locations. It's incredible, you know,
Yeah.
these kinds of things. So yeah, I love it.
Well, I was also when you do one by yourself, that's even harder. If you have someone there to bounce off of, they can kind of help you out. But when you're by yourself, and you were by yourself, you did this solo, it's quite an achievement. So congratulations on it.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I listen, I'm going to be very respectful of your time. I really appreciate you coming here and talking to me about celluloid dreams and about these restorations and cinema. And do you still play video games? I have to ask. Are you active in video games at all?
I'm playing, yes.
Yeah,
I'm not working in
right.
any of it anymore. I got so disillusioned with the video game industry that I really made a decision. I don't want to be part of it anymore.
Yeah.
And there were certain instances over the years that gradually turned me off. You know, Planescape was one, unfortunately. It was kind of a bitter experience for me, even though the game turned out phenomenally well and all that.
Right.
And I'm really proud of the work we did there. But the experience as such was not very pleasant for me. So at that point, I pulled out, and that's when I started DVD review because I was like, I want to do something else. And I got suckered back in. I got I became part of a couple of projects, startup projects that landed flat on their belly. And I was like, okay, not so much fun.
Hmm.
I tried some Kickstarters, right on the belly again. It's like, okay, that's not so much fun either.
Yeah.
Then I went into mobile. I made mobile games very early on when mobile just started, and that was a lot of fun because that took me back to the 80s when I started making video games where you could do a lot of the work yourself and all that, where you could be really independent, could do whatever it is you wanted to do. That lasted for a while until the Apple iPhone came along and sort of destroyed that market for developers, because on the iPhone, the mentality immediately became free or 99-cent games, and there's no money to be made in that. So I pulled out of that and did other stuff, went into writing. I got back into games again last year, or no, about 2 years ago now, when I was working on a AAA title, which was the WWE wrestling game for 2K. And at that point, I realized, oh my God, these AAA titles, they're like, I mean, you have teams of 1,000 people. It's like, if you work on these, you're a nobody, It's like you have no control, you have no influence, you have no say. You're just, yeah, you're a hired coder or a hired producer or whatever you are, and you have to do the job, and you have to do the job on time and all. It was not a lot of fun. And after we completed that title, I was like, you know what? I'm done. I don't care for this. This is not why I got into games in the first place.
Well, you've seen too that there are these companies that are buying developers and studios, and then they don't have anything for them to do, and these
Yeah,
developers are just being put out to pasture.
yeah, just shut them down and
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a crazy time.
Yeah. I mean, but it's been like that for a long time. I mean, I remember there was a trend like that back in the 90s already, where the big companies, the big publishers like EA and Activision and all that would buy all those small independent studios and then just shutter them. And it's like, why the hell, you paid all
Mhm.
this money for these IPs and for these teams and all that, and then 6 months later you decide you don't want them anymore. What,
Yeah.
how does that work? It's
Well,
just,
and see, here's how I could tie this all together as we go out, is that I think we're I think we're kind of at the end of something. I think that things as they have existed for the last 20, 30, 40, some people would even say 70 years. There's this cycle that is coming to an end, and all of these big corporate mergers and these big, executive driven projects seem to be, people don't seem to be interested in a lot of this stuff anymore.
yeah,
Enter the independent creator who is saying, I'll do that and I'll do it as a passion project. And I'm not looking to do, like you said, you don't want to do one or two a month. You want to put out the title when it's ready. And I think that is the best way forward, but we as an audience have to support that. So that's the call to the viewer, to the listener here, that we support what we care about directly. And so I just want to remind people that every dollar we spend and every dollar we don't spend sends a message to the people that are making these things. So I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for being so and it's kind of inspiring. You leave me feeling like, oh, we can do what, like you said, like we just wanted to do it, so we
yeah,
decided to do it. I
yeah.
love that. You're different, you're unique. I've talked to a lot of people here. One guy even told me, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say this. He said, I don't care about movies. This is a business for me. And I was like, oh, you've given us the opposite of that.
Thank
So
you.
I want to support that. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for just being so open and transparent with everything. This was a real pleasure for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Cool.